Good morning or afternoon, guys, depending on which time you're watching this. Today, we're going to talk about some OSHA occupational health and safety issues. Uh, this will either just keep you in compliance with that in case you're asked about it. It will also keep you out of trouble if you're on a job site and OSHA shows up. Some states have state regulations, as if in Tennessee has TOSHA, which is Tennessee Occupational Health and Safety. And then OSHA relies on Tennessee to enforce the safety rules as long as the Tennessee codes meet or exceed OSHA's. So you got some different codes to go by. A lot of people don't like the OSHA thing, but the thing I'd like to challenge you with is make money on it. And we're going to talk about different things here and different ways that you can make money on the OSHA regulations if you know them and if you can document it. The cleaning and restoration industry used to think that they were sort of immune from OSHA unless you were using chemicals, but that's far from the truth now. There's several different things that apply to OSHA and that's in the cleaning and restoration industry that you really can't overlook. And when these would really bite you is when you do it wrong for several years, and then all of a sudden you get a case and they backdate you to all the years you've been doing it wrong. Good example of that we're all aware of would be the asbestos thing that you always see on TV all the time about people getting asbestos, and they've got the lawyers on TV advertising if you work for this company or that company and got into asbestos related stuff, to call the law office of Dewey, Scrum, and Howe, and they will hook somebody up. And then what those law offices do is they also inquire about and find out who are the other employees that you had during that time span and do they have exposures. And so they wind up backdating for 15 or 20 years or whatever the color is. So what you need to do is learn the laws that apply to what is in our industry and do your best to abide by those laws and make money while you're doing it. There's OSHA classes that you can take. Uh, There's several different classes. There's an 8-hour class, there's a 30-hour class, there's a 40-hour class. So it depends on how deep down you want to get into it. But with the cleaning and industry, I would say that you first, go with the 8-hour class and see what you learn. You'll learn a lot about the 8-hour class. It'll tell you if you want to go to the 30-hour and or the 40-hour. So there's a lot of different classes that you can take. What does OSHA cover? It covers health and safety hazards, stuff that people can get hurt on. People normally relate that to electrical shock or fall or getting run over by a forklift or different stuff like that. But it goes a lot further than that. It can relate to sicknesses and airborne illnesses and mold, and the big one that nobody's sort of adhering to in our industry right now is silica dust. So, how many are following the OSHA standards with silica dust? Silica dust being our biggest advocate of silica dust would be sheetrock or drywall, and what to do to people who are exposed to the dust when they're cutting or sawing or sanding into sheetrock or drywall. So if you don't know those, we'll touch on them a little bit today, but those are some of the things that you'll need to know. Of course, you always have machine and electrical hazards. Those are more immediate and something that somebody gets hurt immediately and they go to the yard, and you know you got an OSHA problem. Silica dust and some of the chemical stuff we use don't really fit that category. You got confined space, crawl spaces. or a confined space 99% of the time. What do you have to do? You have to have follow the regulations. You've got to have an outside person with communications that's outside the confined area to monitor the person that's in the confined area. Again, your first thought on that, so that's BS, just to go into a crawl space. Well, it's the law, and it's not BS if the guy in the crawl space gets in there and gets into an oxygen deprivation area, or maybe gets electrocuted and there's nobody there watching him. So the good part about it is you're charging for a supervisor to sit outside and make sure that guy goes in and stays safe. Material handling, such as forklifts and lifting materials at heights and stuff, would be another OSHA thing you have to look at. Um, Chemicals, biological, etc., are some of the hidden dangers and normally don't show up immediately. They're the things that catch up on you down the road. So, um, PPE is a big one. Are you providing people with PPE? And it's not just enough to provide them with PPE, but are they wearing it? Are they wearing it correctly? Or do you walk in and they've got their Tyvek suit with the arms tied around their waist and not even wearing it? So you got to make sure that the people are trained properly and that they're wearing their PPE properly also. Got to know the proper procedures for reporting accidents and reporting incidences. A lot of times you just try to say, oh, it's something small, we'll sweep it under the rug. As a great lawyer once said to me, is you get in a lot more trouble for the cover up than you do for the crime. So the cover up is where people get involved in it and get themselves in trouble because that shows that you were not trying to do the right thing. So be sure that you know your reporting issues and who to report to and what to do. Slip and fall is another big one. We're working around wet carpet, and most carpets and wet floors. Most carpets have soap in them, whether you put it there or whether it's there for from a previous cleaning or whatever. But when you put water and soap and get it on the bottom of your feet, then that obviously becomes very slick and can cause a fall and a slip and fall injury, which can be pretty bad in some cases, broken hips, back injuries, neck injuries, different things such as that. So be sure that you've got that taken care of. Guardrails seem pretty simple, but you tear out a wall or you are working on a roof or something, you need some kind of guardrail, some kind of warning up that, hey, this is an open area. You know, we need to make sure people don't just walk off of this and go into this area. Lighting's important in those areas too, such as in stairways and different areas to where people can actually see where they're trying to walk to. Portable ladders. Ladders always a safety risk. When a person's so many feet off their feet or so many feet or inches off the ground, I believe that to be 4. Don't quote me on that. Look up the regulation in your state. But when they are that high, you have to have a person to stand there and hold the ladder and to be ready to support that person. And you're like, well, that's ridiculous. If we're painting an 8-foot ceiling, somebody's got to hold, or a 9-foot ceiling, somebody's got to hold the ladder all the time. That costs too much money. No, it don't. That's a supervisor, a safety supervisor, standing there to hold the money, and you're making money on the whole time they do that. And you're following the OSHA safety standards. You're also supposed to be tethered when you're working at a minimal height when it's possible and when it's not a very temporary climb up the ladder and back down. You should have a tether going up to something that supports you to help if someone does fall to where they don't hit the ground and get hurt. Lift trucks, safety trucks, forklifts, uh, uh, electric or motorized mules or forklifts, they call them. You've got to have people properly trained on those. They should go online, take the training, and actually receive a license to be able to operate those machines so they can show that they've been properly trained and you can show you've been properly trained. The last thing you want to do is one of those lifts or forklifts to back over somebody and hurt them. I know you've all been to Home Depot most likely in your life, and you see when they're operating a forklift, they have a safety person with flags in their hand, and they walk 2 or 3 foot around the forklift and make sure that that forklift don't run over somebody and somebody try to sneak through and get their foot crushed or something like that. So be sure to keep that in mind, and be sure to have your safety person there so they can watch those people on that lift, and you're going to charge for it. It's a safety person on site to be able to do that. So toxic and hazardous substances such as cleaning agents, chemicals that we use for odor control or cleaning or certain amount of things, they're declared hazardous substance. As common as WD-40 is, WD-40 is a hazardous substance. So you have to know that. I don't think you're going to violate any regulation if you got one little can of WD-40 and you're squirting it on a bolt. That's probably not going to violate the regulation. But if you got somebody working with that all day using cleaning and doing different stuff that, then it most likely will. You have permissible exposure limits. And what those are, as they say, every hazardous subject has a permissible exposure limit. In other words, you can be around, touch, breathe, smell this amount, and it won't be dangerous. But when you go over the permissible exposure limit for that particular product, then it's not safe at that point. So you have to know what those permissible limits are, and the threshold, you will hear that called sometime, the threshold of limited values. You have to know what those are and make sure that your people are not exceeding those. Um, if they do exceed them, you need to know what the proper steps are to do about it, because you got to get them treatment. Again, sweeping it under the rug and pretending it don't happen gets you into that cover up phase we talked about earlier, to where the cover up is a lot more, gets you in a lot more trouble than the crime itself. So asbestos health effects and exposure limits, you've got almost every insurance company or consultant in the country. You don't have to test a house for asbestos if it was built after 19 and you pick the number that they put after that. It is absolutely false. If there's ever been a false statement made, the house could be built in December of 19 or 2023 and you have to test it. I mean, let's face it, they can't keep fentanyl from coming over the border and killing people. How do they keep asbestos from coming over the border and killing people? And the simple answer is they don't. There's asbestos in a lot of common products today that are sold, and that product may or may not be safe as long as it's applied properly. But when you go cutting, grinding, sanding, or ripping out, then it may not be proper anymore. And even though it's legal to sell it in the United States, it don't mean that you're not going to make it friable and make it airborne and make it be a problem. Floor glue is one of those items that is really prevalent about having asbestos in it. Sheetrock mud's an item that has asbestos in it. Ceiling tile, not as much now as it was earlier, but you still have to check this stuff. So your only protection is to have a indoor air quality person come in and test those items for you. When they test those items for you, then it number one, they carry it to the lab and they get it tested, and it gives you a level of protection because you did your due diligence in trying to do the correct thing to keep the area and your employees safe. Number two, how do you make money on that? Well, number one, you charge for the guy coming in to do the testing unless it's third party. We'll talk about that in a second. But number two, it's going to delay the job start a day or two before you can start ripping stuff out. And you say, well, that's costly. Well, it is, but it's not costly to you. It's costly to whoever's paying the bill. If you had to dry and maintain the humidity level in a house for 2 days while you're waiting on testing and test results to come in, it's just 2 more days that you will have to charge for drying and humidity control until you get that clearance. Also gives you a couple of days of prep time to get ready to do the job and to set up your proper containment and do some other stuff like that that will aid you in getting the job done as things go. So don't always look at the negative end of it. Look at it as how do we make money on this. This is not your problem. You didn't create the problem. You're there to create the solution. And if the federal government says you have to follow these rules to create the solution, then you need to follow them. Um, Health effects and exposure limits, we sort of already went over. Biohazards such as bloodborne pathogens and bacteria and viral and animal materials, something you run into every day. The great writers of all these manuals that we try to go by without calling names will tell you that if water comes from a clean source, such as a broken supply line, then that's category one water. Well, it is. But what if it runs across the floor and the people have animals living in the house? You pick up animal dander, you pick up feces that's been deposited into the carpets, pick up urine that's been deposited in the carpets. And at what level do you say this is not category one anymore? It's category two, or it may be even category three. There's only one way you can tell that, and that's with a sample of that water going to a laboratory. I challenge any of you on every single carpet that you clean, when you go into the cleanest looking house you can and you extract that carpet, to go out to your extraction tank and pull out a little bit in a clear vat and look through it and see how clean that water looks. And then come back and discuss, is that category one, or is that category two, or is that category three? However, because of these great manuals that you buy that say it's category one, the only way you'll win that argument, so to speak, with an adjuster or a consultant would be to have laboratory testing done. Well, when your indoor air quality guy comes in to test for asbestos and other things that you need to be cautious of, that's a great time to have them test the water that comes out of that carpet to see if it's classified as category one, category two, or category three. The last thing you want to do is have your people running around doing what you have classified as category one because it originally came from a clean source, and now you're figuring out they've been working in category three water for a long time. So be a little careful on that. Um, Chemical labeling, you get a spray bottle in your truck and you put some XYZ product in there and you don't label that, that's an OSHA violation because somebody sprays that on them or drinks it, or the container bursts and they get it all over them. You don't know what that product is. Uh, every one of us uses the smell test, and that's about the craziest test we can use because what if it's something you shouldn't be sniffing of? So you got to label these containers. You don't want to write on your bottle, use painter's tape. Use whatever you got to do. Label what's in the bottle and keep them labeled. And, know what you're dealing with when you're dealing with those types of products. If you're dealing with hazardous materials, You probably need some hazardous material courses. HAZWOPER is a course that's taken that falls in the upper echelon of OSHA training, and HAZWOPER is a good course, so you learn some of the hazardous material do's and don'ts. Now, the HAZWOPER course will get into some things that really don't apply to stuff we do in our industry, but it's still general good knowledge to have generally to go out and make the place a safer place to work. Um, the first thing you have to do to keep people on the right track is to recognize that you have a hazard. And we've talked about it 2 or 3 times already, is you do that by testing. There's not a restorer or an insurance adjuster or a consultant or a homeowner or anybody that can walk in and point to anything and say, this is hazardous or this is not, unless you identify that product, know what it is. Then you can make that determination. But you have to identify that product, know what that product is, and then you can start to make determinations on what is hazardous and what is not. You see the trailer trucks running up and down the road with the placards on them. Those placards are designed to let emergency personnel know what that trailer is hauling should they have an accident or a fire, and they will know what type of chemical they're dealing with. Well, you need to be the same way. You need to know what you're dealing with when you go into a house and you have a spill or you have water saturated into carpet and uh, you're extracting that water out and dealing with it. So know how to protect yourself from that. So at the drawing team, we're here days, nights, weekends, and holidays to help you. If you need any information from me or additional resources or help, feel free to call me at any time, and we will be glad to come running or come flying to get over there and try to help you out. So, again, I'm Scott Tarpley. You see my phone number there. Give me a call anytime that you need additional resources. Thank you, and I've enjoyed speaking to you.